Hi, I'm Suze Shaner with Sage Leadership Strategies, and I'm your host today of Community Forum. And I have the great pleasure to have with me Anouk Froidevaux. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's a dance artist, choreographer, educator, and coach. Welcome, Anouk.
Thank you so much for having me, Suze.
Well, thanks for coming. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right, great. Well, wanted to have you on the show. Now, your website says your work addresses a need to restore balance with ourselves, our communities, and with nature, remembering our wholeness and reclaiming our sense of belonging through embodiment and the ritual of performance. Now, I know by background, you're an artist and this has evolved. So can you elaborate a little bit about what you mean by that?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think I want to start by just zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, and address, through my own artistic research and my own personal process, I was kind of tuning into what I imagine being kind of the source of our suffering, and the big issue of our time, looking at climate change, as a result of our fractured relationship with the natural environment and with our own bodies. So my work as a dance artist, as an educator, my main theme is I always go back to the body as a source of wisdom, which is rooted in the wisdom of nature. So, this fractured relationship manifests in all kinds of ways, within our society, looking at the long list of chronic illnesses related to stress, burnout, anxiety, depression.
So really what you're saying is that because we're natural creatures, right? I mean, that and in some sense, just with modern day, we've gotten disconnected from our own bodies. I mean, it's even interesting in the times we're living, most stuff is happening virtually. So you think that people are just like, a person from the neck up, like we're kind of not even embodied now. And in the times we're living in, we're not even like really seeing people live, it'd be weird to see people actually stand up walking around. We think everybody's like sitting on a Zoom call or something.
I know the day we end up meeting in person again, it's going to be a shock. But I think it really kind of boils down to asking, how are we in relationship? How are we in relationship with ourselves, with our communities, and with nature, and how to renew and restore this relationship? I think that's the big question. And COVID, the pandemic, has just amplified that so much for me. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's definitely amplified and really brought home, and unfortunately, some painful ways in which we are all connected for better or for worse, right? So you're saying getting in touch with the body gets us back in touch with our natural being, way of being, and getting in touch with our bodies, we can be better connected to the earth. So say more about that in terms of climate change and like that relationship.
Right. So, in my work, I approach the body holistically. So I look at the body-mind connection, and when you address the body, like holistically on all levels of awareness, so the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, that to me is sort of the definition of embodiment. And from that place, then when we feel connected with ourselves, we start to also sort of feel again connected, that we're inherently part of nature, and we want then, I imagine, to give back to our communities, to give back to the environment. We want to be involved. That's sort of where I stem my inspiration from. And especially, as human beings, especially as a woman, we are cyclical, so being more in touch with your own cyclical nature, you really start to tune actually to the cycles of nature as well. I find that really interesting and empowering also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, and that's all about unity, mind, body, spirit. Everything's all, integrated. So your work has really evolved. I mean, can you just say a little bit about
Hmm.
kind of your foundations? Because I know that you were trained classically as a dancer. Can you say a little bit about your background and how this evolved and how you got here? And then we do have a
Hmm.
clip that we want to look at in a little bit, not right now, but just take us. How did you get here, and how did this evolve to here? And then we'll talk about where your work's going.
Okay. Yeah, so I grew up in Canada, in Vancouver on the West Coast, and I trained professionally in classical ballet and modern dance techniques. I was totally devoted to becoming a professional dancer, and movement from the beginning was really kind of my primary language, if you will. And then when I was 18, after I graduated high school, I was accepted to the Rotterdam Dance Academy, where I completed the individual dance study bachelor program. And I was hired then by a dance company in Holland by a Belgian choreographer. And that just launched my career as a professional dancer. I've worked and lived throughout Europe, performed internationally. I've also created and performed my own work. And basically, during that time, I was interested in healing, and sort of I had like a strong spiritual practice, and I was a passionate performer, but I sort of felt like those two worlds in some ways were divided. And
Mm,
a pivotal moment in my career was in 2012 when I got a serious lower back injury. I was diagnosed with a hernia in my lumbar spine, and I went through sort of this initiation, if you will, where it started out as physically healing my injury
mhm,
so I could go back to the stage. But then I really wanted to understand the root cause of my pain. I wanted to really understand have a deeper understanding of my health and well-being on a mental, emotional, physical, energetic level. So I started really going through a process of healing and personal development.
mm,
um, and at that time I started teaching, so I became certified in the gyrotonic and the gyrokinesis method, which is a movement system that I've been practicing as a dancer since 2007 for injury prevention and to take care of my body. And then through that process, I was able to heal my back without having to operate. I returned to the stage. um, I started teaching. I was working with people of all different age groups and levels of fitness, and I also started giving workshops in creative movement improvisation to both professionals and amateurs. Because
So
at that time, sorry,
oh,
yeah,
no, go ahead.
it's a
Go
long
ahead.
story.
At that time, what?
Yeah, yeah, just to finish. So at that time, kind of for me, what was important was to sort of revisit, why I started dancing in the first place, to come back to that just essential joy and love for movement and dance and share that with others. And kind of understanding that my skills as a dancer, having this career and background, I could really apply those to other situations, and sort of facilitate people's leadership skills and personal development through movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so needed today. I think so many people are not in touch with their bodies. I'm just curious when you
Hmm.
said um, movement is your primary language, and yet
Hmm.
we're having a conversation talking about it. So can you say more about that? Like, at what point did you know it was your primary language? Did you always have a sense of that since yeah, say more about that.
Yeah. Well, my mom, she always says that I came out moving. Like, she just initially saw my passion for movement, and she put me in dance classes. I had a wonderful teacher when I was 3. And then she introduced me to the theater, to ballet, and I just fell in love. And I started training professionally in classical ballet when I was from 8 years old. It felt to me like a calling.
Yeah, so
Um,
it sounds like first of all, you had a mother who recognized that from the get-go and nurtured and
yeah,
cultivated that. So that's
yeah.
fantastic. So that you grew up in an environment that thrived and supported that. You also talked about after your injury, healing yourself and, on all levels. You were on this sort of spiritual journey and this very professional movement journey, and it sounds like they kind of intertwined. Can you talk about what was a key insight or lesson learned from your healing at this time?
Oh, there was a lot, but what I understood in that moment, that my body was speaking to me. It was really, it was manifesting, and in also throughout my 20s, I was struggling with anxiety. I had issues sometimes with my mental health. And then the physical aspect of this injury, I was like, my body's talking to me. There's something for me to understand here. And another
Well, it
pivotal
definitely
moment
had
in
you out
my
of commission. I mean, it had you out of commission for a while. I mean, you couldn't dance. So that alone,
yeah.
you couldn't move as much. That alone will, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I think most artists would recognize this, that, you sort of identify with your practice as an artist. So, you kind of go through this identity crisis in some ways. If you suffer from a major injury or that kind of a challenge, you ask, who am I? And I think, the last those years that I devoted, even though I continued performing, I kind of withdrew from the theater world for a while to go inward and to look at, who I was as a person, as a human being,
Not
because
just,
I
not just as
feel.
a dancer, not just as a dancer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And in
but
so
yeah.
many environments, that's kind of another thing, to go back to the main theme around, this sort of fractured relationship and having to renew it. Because I also feel like in all environments, we're so educated to kind of look outside of ourselves for answers, to achieve a certain level of performance, to be productive, to look outside for answers and affirmation and validation. And it's like, actually, for me, again, I go back to the body as sort of being kind of an archive of our personal and collective history, like with stories living inside of us that are waiting to be told. And it's just rich in creative resources and transformative potential.
Our bodies definitely are our biographies. They house our biographies. So to your point
Exactly.
around, um, I'm trying to understand the origin of illness. And I mean, I think now science is catching up with what some of the ancient yogis and spiritual teachers knew, that
Yeah.
whatever thoughts, emotions don't get properly metabolized and move through our system, sit in the body and usually manifests itself in stagnant energy and or disease. I mean, that's kind of what we now know to be true. So I'd love to go, we have a clip of, so we're going to go to the clip, but can you say something about it before we go to the video?
Yeah, so this film was actually, I started the artistic research before COVID, interestingly enough, and I was looking at themes connected to grief and mental health and its intergenerational impact, and while also addressing the climate crisis. And so I created it, and then I finished producing it during 2020, during COVID. So that was pretty
That's
interesting.
intense. Okay. Okay. So
The
let's,
timing
Dave,
of it.
let's go to, yeah, we're going to go to the clip. Let's go to the clip.
Dark angel, sing your song. Dark angel, sing your song. Dark angel, sing your song. For the ones who have lost, for the time that won't win, for a new age to begin. myself home. I'm walking myself home. I'm walking myself. I'm walking myself. This is a story. It is a story of great mystery. It is a story of distant lands. It is a story of travel. It is a story of fractured roots. It is a story of forgotten origins. It is a story of migration. It is a story of survival. It is a story of changing times and shifting tides. It is a story of arrival. It is a story of finding a home. It is a story of searching for one's place. It is a story of becoming. It is a story of belonging. This is a story of looking out towards the horizon and knowing that there was something beyond the great sky.
Wow. That is a powerful clip. I couldn't see. Where was it filmed?
It was actually filmed in Vancouver, where I grew up. It was a real full circle experience to come home and create work there. It was connected to an artistic residency that I was taking part in at the Dance Center in Vancouver. So I was working in the studio on a performance installation as well. Yeah.
So can you say more about what you were exploring there? Walking yourself home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's like a mantra for me. So another thing that's really developed in my artistic practice is the exploration between movement and voice. I work with my voice a lot now, and yeah, the idea of walking myself home is really about this return home to myself, sort of renewing my relationship through the archetype of Mother Nature, coming home to my sense of wholeness as a complete human being, and inspiring also that connection to Mother Earth. Yeah.
Well, even in terms of thinking about we live in our bodies. Like
Yeah, exactly.
time we live in, oh, Dan saying, wow. Sometimes we live in our heads, but really we live in our bodies, and we forget that because we're always like thinking up here. But I'll never forget when I had
Yeah.
my first ultrasound when I was pregnant with my daughter, and the nurse, the heartbeat, when we first heard the heartbeat, and the nurse said, listen to that. That's going to beat for 70 years. I mean, I hope longer, but she said 70 years. And this was like the first spark of life. And I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. Like the origin, when you first start to realize this is a being that's going to come out into the world, so
Totally.
it was such a powerful scene there where you were embracing the rock. Can you say something about
Yeah.
what that felt like?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that you talk about, your story with having your daughter inside of you, because it, for me, and somehow I think on an intuitive level, I was like connecting, like going back to the womb, that connection with my own mother, and with, the archetype of Mother Nature, and just that return home, that return to wholeness.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
it
that
definitely
metaphor,
represented that.
yeah, no, sorry, that metaphor is so powerful in our times. If we think about Mother Earth and
Mhm.
what we're doing to Mother Earth and how it's affecting all of us in some way, and the role that women in general on the planet and the mother and woman energy on the planet is trying to have more of a voice. So I just think there's a
Exactly.
lot of different metaphors to explore here. I mean, what would you say about that?
Mhm. Definitely. Those are the themes in my work now. I really deal with issues around femininity, feminism. And I just want to mention also too, like as a performer, it's important for me to connect, on a very kind of personal level through narrative. But I don't want that to be totally explicit. So I'm happy, to hear you and sort of the feedback to receive also from you. I want to take the audience on a journey also inside themselves so that it evokes
Mm.
feelings, images, memories, so they create their own associations to the work. That's important for me as well. So
Well,
that
the
it's
first,
about an exchange. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because then it becomes co-created in something else. I mean, when I first saw that
Yeah.
clip, obviously before today, when you first sent it to me, I was like, wow, it's so expressive and heavy with grief
Hmm.
and disconnection. And at the same time, it's grief being expressed through connecting with the earth, which is like, I don't know, sometimes I think is the earth crying, I mean, just given, you know, so it's
Yeah.
really heavy, but I think that our culture isn't always as comfortable with death, dying, grief, and we don't really have. And the arts is a wonderful way for people to feel like they have an avenue for expression for that. And that's a lot of what's circulating the planet this past year in terms of people feeling
Hmm.
disconnected and possibly having loved ones die during the pandemic. So it's I don't know. Can you say more about that? That's what really struck me. It was like, whoa, it's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was really going there, like on a living it in my whole body and my whole performance to really touch on that level of grief. Because exactly that I think, especially in our Western society, there's quite still a taboo around how we deal with death. And the magnitude of it now that we're living through is just, we can sometimes disassociate from our own feelings about what's going on. So I want, that performance can be a catharsis as well, that to help people connect with their own emotions around that and get some kind of release from it as well.
Well, because that struck me again when you were just on the rock. And a rock is it's a rock. It's solid.
Hmm.
It's such solid mass. Is just how debilitating sometimes people can be in grief, and how important it is for people to have some witnessing in their grief. So
Hmm.
the work that you do is so important. I want to talk a little bit about, you're the creator of Body and Belonging, a
Hmm.
methodology that uses movement, breath work, voice, and the expressive arts. I'm a trained expressive arts therapist, so I have a great appreciation for that, to approach
Yeah.
the body as a place of belonging, a source of unlimited inspiration, creativity, and transformative potential. And I know you typically work with people in a coaching capacity.
Hmm.
We've got like maybe 4 more minutes, but I do want to be able to touch on this a little bit, to talk about how you work with people in terms of their expressing and moving emotions
Hmm.
and thoughts through their own body, and you joining with them in that.
Definitely. Yeah. So for me, it always starts with intention. When you work intentionally with your breath, with movement and with energy, you sort of include the body as a whole, which to me is the definition of embodiment. And people can really, move a lot of things through movement, if you will. So it's almost like, once we become aware of certain holding patterns that are associated or connected to certain stories, um, you know, once we start to move and express ourselves from those places, we start to feel a release. We perceive like a shift in our energy, our perspective changes, and we start to feel more connected and part of something greater. I think so. It's a process of transformation, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody was watching this right now, and
Hmm.
and they were feeling stuck in some way in their lives, or heavily grieving, or what, they had some strong emotion that they wanted to process, What's something bodily that you could recommend for them right now?
Yeah, so really simply, like my own daily practice as well, is I really start with my breath and gentle movement from there. And that really connects, body, mind. It integrates all levels. So even just taking a few deep breaths a day. But if you can sort of incorporate that as a practice, and also just get outside, take a walk, connect with nature. We're so involved in our digital lives right now. So I just really encourage people to go outside and connect with nature again. Yeah.
And so we've got about another minute and a half left. Can you leave us with, because there's so much we could explore here, but can you leave us with maybe just a headline on kind of your greatest learning with this work and where you want to take it?
Yeah.
I have a big right question.
I know, right. I have a big vision. I mean, I look forward to the day that I can perform in front of a live audience again, for sure. And I am actually focused on developing my business online. So I'm teaching and coaching online. I'm putting together an online workshop and tutorial. And then my dream is to have my own studio one day where I can host workshops, creative retreats, and go deep into my own creative process. Yeah.
So if somebody was interested in anything we talked about today and they wanted to connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So I can leave my email address because I have a newsletter that I send out that I connect to my audience with. I'm also very active on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, so give us your email. You could just say it.
So that's Anouk, ANOUK.Froidevaux, FROIDEVAUX @gmail.com.
Okay, so it's your name. They can see your name right there on the screen. So that's great.
Yeah.
Anouk.Froidevaux at gmail.com. I'm not
Easy.
pronouncing it correctly. I'm really sorry about that. Listen, Anouk, thank you so much for coming on the show. We might have to have you back.
Thank you for
again.
having me.
To
I would love
here.
to. I would love to. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, thank you.